Hi, I'm Jeff Hoffman, and you're listening to the Heart Healthy Hustle Show with my friend, Jonathan Frederick.
What are you getting after? What seeds are you planting? What are you overcoming? Think big. Think even bigger. Take some risks. God's got your back. Go for it. Don't hold back. Don't ever have regrets in your life. Go fail. Go grow from those things. Live your life.
Your identity is not defined by your successes or your failures.
If you're not happy where you're at, you won't be happy where you're going. Choose to do the things that will make you the person you want to be, that will make you a better person next week and next year.
You're going to have to leave some things you're actually good at behind so that you can find what you're wired for, what you're born for.
Being a world-class entrepreneur is being in every area of life excellent.
It is the little things that are so easy not to do.
The best thing that you can do is assume the best in people.
I want people around the world to believe they can do something great with their life.
If I build the biggest business, but I destroy my physical body and I lose my health, I don't think that's success. While you're on the journey climbing to success, never forget the things that matter most.
If you like this episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Welcome to episode 89 of the Heart Healthy Hustle Show. It's April 8th, 2019. I'm glad you're here. Today, we're speaking with Jeff Hoffman. Who's Jeff Hoffman? If you don't know, you're about to know. I'm warning you though. The more you hear about Jeff, the more excited you'll become to listen to this interview. Jeff is an incredibly successful entrepreneur, a proven CEO, worldwide motivational speaker, published author, a Hollywood film producer, a producer of a Grammy-winning jazz album, and executive producer of an Emmy Award-winning TV show. He has been the founder of multiple startups. Jeff has done 8 startups. Is that correct, Jeff? 8?
Yes, that is correct.
8 startups. Of those, 2 were acquired, 2 were IPOs, 2 actually failed, and 2 are still going. Is that correct?
That is also correct.
Has been the CEO of both public and private companies. Jeff has been a part of a number of well-known companies, including Priceline.com, Ubid.com, ColorJar, and more. Jeff serves on the boards of companies in the U.S., Europe, South America, Africa, and Asia, supporting entrepreneurs and small businesses in more than 150 countries. He also serves on the boards of Global Entrepreneurship Week and the Unreasonable Group. He supports the White House, the U.S. State Department, the United Nations, and foreign governments on economic growth initiatives and entrepreneurship. Jeff is a frequent keynote speaker, having been invited to speak in over 50 countries on the topics of innovation, entrepreneurship, and business leadership. Jeff teaches innovation workshops to major corporations on a regular basis. Jeff is a featured business expert seen on Fox News, Fox Business, CNN, CNN International, Bloomberg News, CNBC, ABC, and NPR, and in publications including Forbes, Inc., Time, Fast Company, The Wall Street Journal, and more. If that's not enough to get you excited for this interview, Jeff received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the National CEO Council for his contributions to the field of entrepreneurship, and he received the Champion of Entrepreneurship Award from J.P. Morgan Chase, Citibank, and Rising Tide Capital. Outside of the world of technology, Jeff has produced movies, has produced musical events, including concerts, tours, and charity events with such artists as Elton John, Britney Spears, NSYNC, and others. And Jeff serves on numerous charity and nonprofit boards. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Give a brief background on how your day is going so the audience can get a gist of what's going on with this call and everything.
Sure. I was flying from the West Coast, and we're working on a project to help rebuild the city of Watts in South Central LA. And I was flying to the East Coast to Ohio and flew into a snowstorm. So instead of being in the office for this call, I just pulled over the side of the road in the blowing snow so I could make this call with you guys.
Definition of an entrepreneur. And honestly, Jeff doesn't need this interview or anything. This is really just to help us as the listeners. And it's very much appreciated for you joining us today, Jeff. We usually start out the show with a favorite success quote or a saying that you live by. So can you share with the audience what you got and what it means to you?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I have this whiteboard where I write those things down, and I have more than one over the years, the quotes that I literally live by. I will tell you the one that guides my life now, though. It's not so much that one that was guiding my life when I was launching companies, but the one that guides my life now has 4 words. And I wrote it down one day when a thought occurred to me, And what I wrote was, there is no they. And the reason I wrote that is, if you want to make change in the world, people always say, man, they should fix it. Geez, they should help those people. They should do something. And if everybody that sees a problem in the world is saying they should help those people, nobody helps those people. And that literally happened to me one day when I found myself saying they should help those people. And then I realized there is no they. It's you. You need to get up, get off the couch, and go fix the thing you see instead of waiting for the mysterious they to fix it. So there is no they, as written in huge letters on my wall, so that when I find myself complaining about something, I immediately stop and instead go do something about it.
That's powerful. Accepting responsibility.
Yeah, somebody's got to own it. Why not you?
Boom. I want to delve into the richness and the power of relationships, how it's helped you go from starting out as a younger professional, turning entrepreneur. Also, though, how you recommend we facilitate growing new relationships, not just for business leverage or anything, but also enriching our lives. But what action steps would you recommend I take to facilitate connecting with great people along the way? How to transition from I'm more of a hyper-competitive, service-oriented, but I want to transition, more to just focusing on service and connection orientation versus my natural tendency to be like hard charging.
All right. Well, actually, I'm glad you used that word hyper-competitive because I am too. And I think that's one of the DNA requirements for good entrepreneurs. You really have to care, and you really have to want to win, and you really have to drive hard every day to get there. So I'm glad to hear you say that. But you asked probably my favorite question about relationships and people. And you also pointed out that there's two aspects to it. So let me hit the first one first, which is business. People always talk, when they talk about growing a company and scaling, right? I've written one book in my life called Scale, because that's the thing I've always focused on, how to grow companies. And we were blessed enough to have a couple of our companies turn into multi-billion-dollar global companies. So we scaled them. And when you talk about growing your business, for any of your listeners, and scaling, people always ask, what do you need most to grow a business? And they always say funding, and they're wrong. The answer, the scarcest resource in the world is not financial capital, it's human capital. They can give you all the money, that you want, but if you don't have the right team and you don't have a team of people that you can empower and get out of their way and let them grow the business with you and for you, you're never going to scale. So given that human capital is the scarcest resource, you have to dedicate time to finding it and building relationships. And so what I do, to answer your question, is about the time I started to realize that I was never going to scale until I could get out of my own way, which means finding people smarter than you and then literally trusting them and letting go. So you tell somebody, look, you handle this. I know it's your baby. It's your business, for our listeners, but you're going to have to let go and you're going to have to trust people and you're going to have to feel excited about people smarter than you, not threatened by those people. Be glad that Michael Jordan or whoever, Steph Curry, LeBron James, be glad they're on your team and not the other team. Don't be jealous of them. And so to find those people takes work. The best people in growing a business, get this, the way you hire people is you run ads, right? You put a job posting somewhere. But the simple truth is most of the people replying to a job posting are replying to it because they lost theirs. Okay? So the best people in any category are probably not looking for a job. In fact, they probably already have a good job and they get calls all the time for jobs. They're not out looking. So they're not going to respond to your ad and they're not going to wander into your office. So you know what you have to do? You have to go out and find them. So I schedule time as a business owner. My whole life, I would literally schedule days, a day or two each month, where I would leave the office, leave the company. And what I was doing for that day was going out hunting talent and building relationships. One time I saw this sign that said tech meetup, right? And it was at some pizza place. And I just went. It was whopping $15. And I just went. And I said, you know what? I need tech people. So I'm just going to go hang out at a tech meetup and meet people. Another time, probably my all-time favorite, was I knew I needed someone to run HR for me. And I didn't have those relationships because I'm an engineer by trade. I didn't know HR people. So I started asking people, where do HR people hang out? And someone said SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Managers. I didn't even know what that was. So I Googled it, and on its homepage, it said, don't forget to register for our upcoming national conference. So I'm not an HR person, but for my day out of the office that month, I signed up for the SHRM conference, and I went to their conference. And it was me and 1,000 HR people. And, when you're trying to build a team, that's shooting fish in a barrel. People were saying, wait, you're not even in HR? What are you doing here? And I said, amazingly, I'm trying to find someone to run HR for me. And all the HR people in the whole country are gathered in this building right now. That is a great way to build relationships. I sat in on the talks. I listened to what they do for a living, what their interests are, and I met a ton of people. So the moral of the story is you won't scale until you find people smarter than you in every category you're not the best in. And you won't find those people sitting in your office. You got to get out of your office and go places and meet people that you would not normally meet during your day to create relationships that will enable you to grow your business. And the second part of the question you asked, which was personally, that's the coolest part of it. I've managed to meet a whole range of people different than me that I would not have met if I just stayed in my lane and stayed in my office. So I have these relationships that enrich my life and my experiences and my knowledge base, because I know a lot of people that I just would not have met if I didn't force myself out of my comfort zone to meet these people.
That's powerful. How my main, not rebuttal, but follow-up question to that would be, they say to make friends, you have to not only be interested in other people sincerely, but also look to your left or right and say, oh, you too? So how, if you're putting yourself out of your lane, as you say, how does that relationship naturally bud if you're completely different than the person to your left or right?
Because assumably, these are people that in the same way that I wanted to learn something about the tech people, something about HR, that I want to constantly expand my experience and my knowledge base by meeting different kinds of people, so do they. And if they don't, by the way, then those are not people you need in your network. Part of good relationship management is eliminating people that add nothing to you, that don't help you grow and don't help you learn. So by definition, if I meet people that aren't curious about the fact that we are different, then they're probably not people I need to build a relationship with. I love building relationships with people that say, wow, we're so different. Let's share each other's stories. Tell me about you. Tell me about your life. I was just down in one of the things I like to do now, I do mentoring all over the world. But one of my favorite activities is in every country I go to, I try to find a way to have dinner in some family's home so that I can experience their life the way they experience it.
Love it.
And if it's people that, by definition, people that are resistant to people not like them, they're not going to invite me to their home. But people that would love to learn about my life as much as I'd love to learn about theirs, they love these kinds of relationships. So you just have to focus on making sure you're finding the right kind of people. And those are the kind of people that are just as curious about you and your differences as you are about theirs.
So there's a mutual curiosity.
Yes, I think that intellectual curiosity, in fact, I have a TED Talk called The Power of Wonder that's out there.
Great talk.
And I talk about the fact that if you can go back and regain your sense of childlike wonder, like a 5-year-old who wonders how everything works and who everyone is and why everyone's doing what they're doing, if you go back and regain your sense of childlike wonder, the world becomes an amazing place and people become these fascinating puzzles to figure out again, the same way kids did. So I make it a point to remind myself periodically that I need to never lose my sense of childlike wonder.
Common trend to the listener out there. That's a common trend with the heavy hitters coming on this show. Very common thread. Wow. Jeff, talk to us about the first time you went 130 miles per hour in your first Ferrari and fine-tuning the engine of life and finding your resonant frequency. Because
sure, I can't believe you know that story.
I love that.
So for all of the listeners, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner is a heavy burden, and it's complicated. And you're trying to balance everything from business to life to finance to health. I mean, we're talking heart healthy here, right? That includes a lot of aspects, from your physical health to your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, your financial health. All these things add up.
Yeah.
And you're trying to balance them all. And it's even harder when you're an entrepreneur because everybody's depending on you, from employees to investors to customers. So some days it feels heavy. And in fact, when I go out and I speak, one of the most common questions I get from entrepreneurs is the question about relationships. They say, man, how do I, my wife, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my husband, my whatever is always so upset at me because I work too much. How do you balance that? So struggling with all that myself, I was thinking about all that, and the story of why I bought a sports car is a story from a different day. It was a promise I made myself as a child. And when I fulfilled that promise, the other end of the promise was I was going to buy that Ferrari, which I did.
Because
one day
a lot of people told you that you couldn't, right?
Yeah, that's just the quick story is when I was a child, I saw a poster of a Ferrari, didn't even know what it was. And I asked my mother, why is everybody so fascinated by this car? My mother said, because it's an unattainable dream. And I said, wait, Ferraris aren't real? My mom said, they're real. You'll just never have one. Wow. And I said, wait, does somebody have one? My mom said, well, yeah, just not you or anybody we know. And I said, well, why not? My mom said, it's just not something that's ever going to happen to people like us and you in your lifetime. And that made me say one day, if everybody has that attitude, then they're right. They're never going to drive a car like that. And I never wanted the car. What I wanted to prove was you should set your own limits and you should stop letting the rest of the world tell you what you're capable of and what you're not. And so when I told friends at school, I said, just as a test, one day I'm going to drive a Ferrari. They all laughed. I said, why is that funny? And they said, dude, have you ever even seen one where we live? You will never even see one in our lifetime, let alone drive one. And so I made a bet with my child self. I said, if it is true that the size of your dreams and the level of your work ethic, if you have big dreams and you work as hard as your dreams are big, no one should be able to put a cap on you. Therefore, if I really wanted one, I should be able to buy that car someday, if I'm willing to dream big and work hard. So I promised myself if I ever achieved a specific set of goals, I would go buy it just to show that it can be done. So I had that car. It's a race car. And I took the car out driving one day, and now I'm going to confess to breaking the law. I decided it was 5 a.m. on a Sunday. No one was on the highway, and I decided to kick it up a little bit. And I started driving the car 70, then 80, then 90, then 100 miles an hour. The car is a race car. The engine's actually air inducted and vents on the side. It sounds like a jet when it spins up and down, but it's very loud. So when you're driving in the car, it's like, again, if you were driving in a race car, it's a very loud engine. And when the car hit 100 and then 110, 120, when I hit 130 miles an hour, the car went dead silent. And I thought, wow, I worked my whole life to buy this Ferrari and now I just broke it. And I was a little distressed. And then when I got up to 140, it started making noise again. And I drove the car at I touched 170 and then I chickened out.
Word.
So at 170 on a highway, I let off the gas and that was it. I never went faster than that, but I just wanted to see what it felt like. So I get home and I call the Ferrari dealer and I said, hey, I got a question. And they said, what? And I said, I was driving my car and when I hit 130 miles an hour, it went dead silent. What did I do wrong? And the Ferrari people laughed. And I said, what? And they said, the car went dead silent because it was literally designed to run at 130 miles an hour. It's designed to cruise at that speed. And they said, so when you hit 130 miles an hour, every piston, every gear, every piece of that car was in perfect harmony because it was exactly the speed it was designed for. And the guy, this is an engineer, right? A mechanic. And he said, and I'm an engineer. He said, let me explain it to you in engineering terms. He said, when that car hit 130 miles an hour, it hit its resonant frequency, which was the frequency that every piece of that engine was designed to run at. That's why it was silent, because it was so happy. And I hung up the phone and I said to myself, when he said it was at resonant frequency, I said, man, what's mine? What is my resonant frequency? What combination of factors do I have to have so I am as happy as that car? So I feel like I am exactly where I'm supposed to be in life, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So I want to share something with your listeners that they should do, because it's what I went home and did.
Please.
I went home and I wrote down, instead of the gears and the pistons in my engine, I wrote down the pieces of my engine of life. My relationship with my parents, your relationship with your significant other, your friends, your physical health, your mental health, everything we talked about, your financial health, your spiritual health, all the gears in your engine, that if they were all tuned right, you would love your life. You would be at resonant frequency. And when I wrote them down on a big whiteboard and stared at them, I was able to go to each one and say, how is this one going? And what you realize is if you constantly look at all the gears of your engine, of your life, and visibly look at them and say, how is this one doing? And adjust the ones that are out of sync, your odds of hitting resonant frequency are much higher. Like I looked at one when I wrote down family, and I was like, man, I honestly never really resolved an issue with my father. I need to call him. And when I went back to my father and we talked it out, that one was in harmony. And then I looked and I said, here's a financial goal. I need to work hard to achieve that. And then that one's in harmony. And maybe it's a physical goal. I've been talking myself out of workouts lately and I need to exercise. So I'm going to make it a point to do it every other day. And now that one's in harmony. And eventually I got to a point where I looked at my whole life and I said, this is pretty good. I feel like I've hit a resonant frequency. I feel like I am where I am supposed to be in this world, doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's only because I wrote it down and paid attention to it.
Would you recommend we attack one at a time, one piston at a time?
Yes. When we talk about balance, because people always say to me, how do you find balance? You're never in balance. You're always just doing the best that you can. Mm-hmm. Life is messy, and life always delivers us all kinds of unexpected things. So the point is just address the thing that needs you most at that time.
Yeah.
And go fix that one. Put everything down and go resolve that issue with your father. And when that's resolved, go back and something else is a little off. And now go address that one. You can't have it all. You can't do everything at once. So accept the fact that life is messy. It'd be really boring if it wasn't. And just do the best you can. But the thing is, constantly keep looking at the list and saying, which of these things is most out of sync now and needs my attention? And go work on that one till you feel good about it, and then go back to the board again. It's a constant juggling act, but it's okay. We are not perfect, and we should stop striving for perfection. We should be happy with knowing that we're doing the best we can.
And would you say that going at each category full force will then expand your toolkit, so to speak, exponentially as you go into the next compartment of the engine to work on that?
I think you're right on with that statement. And, when you and I were talking a few minutes ago about being hyper competitive, that's that drive to when you're going to attack anything, give it all you got, right? Whatever you're working on at that point, give it everything that you have.
Yeah.
You know what? Can I tell you a really quick sports story?
Go ahead.
I don't know if you've heard me talk about my friend Evander Holyfield.
I don't think I have.
All right. So Evander, for those who don't know, is the boxer that not everyone knows that he knocked out Mike Tyson, but everybody knows that Mike Tyson bit my friend's ear off in the next fight. And Evander was training for a fight. We've been friends for decades. And I was there with him while he was training. And he was doing an exercise that he does 300 times a day, which is insane, right? He does this stuff that most humans couldn't do 20 reps of, and he does it 300 times a day. And we were getting ready to go to Vegas for a big title fight, and he was training. And as he was finishing, I was counting. And I said, 299, 300. And Evander stopped me and he said, Jeff, did I just do 299 or 300 reps? And I was like, my God, you got to be kidding. This is an insane thing. Anyway, I said, well, whatever, you did 300. And he said, are you sure it wasn't just 299? I was like, seriously? And I said, it was 300. And he looked at me for a minute and he went back down to the ground and did one more rep. And he said, I think it was only 299. And I rolled my eyes because I couldn't believe the absurdity of that. And Evander said something that changed my life. This isn't a sports story, but it's about going at everything the way you just said, which is all out when you address each issue. He said, Jeff, look at me. It was kind of a funny moment because he looked me right in the eyes with this look, and I thought, well, that was a short life. This was not the guy to upset, the heavyweight champion of the world. And he said, look at me. And I said, what? And Evander said, the difference between 299 and 300 is the difference between being the heavyweight champion of the world and every other boxer. And then he got up and walked away silently, and I didn't move for 10 minutes. I just closed my eyes, I had goosebumps. And I let that life lesson sink into my soul because the reason he became the champ is because if you set out to do anything, and 300 is what it takes, if you settle for 299 today, because that's almost 300, tomorrow, 298 is almost 299, and the next day, 297 is almost 298. And down the street, someone in life is doing 300, and they're going to beat you. And so I wrote on my wall that night, I wrote the number 299 with a red circle and a slash through it. No 299s. And every time I approach anything, If I don't feel like I'm going at it all out, I see that no 299 wall reminder on the wall, and I stop and I say, Jeff, was that really your best effort? Because if it's not, roll your sleeves up and go finish it. And that has helped me achieve a lot more than I might have without it. And what I love now is when I share that story, people around the world send me a picture of a 299 that they've written on the wall somewhere at their home to remind them that whatever thing you're working on today, go all out on that thing today.
I'm just kind of letting that resonate for a second.
Yeah, that really drives me a lot.
Would you say that's one of the most impactful, useful business lessons you've ever learned?
It is, because you know what happened the very first time? I was writing a business proposal, and I finished at midnight, and I looked at it and said, this is good enough. This will win the contract. And I was turning the lights off and walking out of my office, and I saw my no 299 symbol. And I stopped, and I said, Jeff, this is good enough, and you'll win this contract, but is it the best proposal you've ever written? Should I not strive for every time I write one to see if it can be the best one yet? And I said, it's not 300. It's good enough, but it's not 300. So I poured some coffee, turned the lights back on, and stayed till 4:30 in the morning. And I sent that proposal in. When I finished, I said, this is 300. This is as good as I can possibly do. And when I sent it in, the company called me, and she said, not only did you win this business hands down, but she said, I did something I've never done before. She said, your proposal was so much better than every other company in your industry that I was at my own industry's conference, and I did something I've never done before. I told all of my competitors they shouldn't waste their time with a proposal process. They should just hire you because no one comes close. Out of the difference between quitting at midnight and staying up the rest of the night, instead of just winning her business, I won 4 other contracts that weren't even out to bid. They just called me and said, look, we just want to sign you. Everybody says you're head and shoulders better. That was the business difference to me between 299 and 300.
That slight edge, the extra push.
Yep. You're finishing strong in the way a lot of other people say, this is good enough. And it will show in your business life.
One of my favorite ways to learn is through listening. I do enjoy reading, but listening allows you to multitask. Let's say you're driving to work, you're running errands, cleaning up on a Saturday, whatever you're doing. Audio allows you to multitask, and that's why I've reached out to audible.com to get a promo set up between Heart Healthy Hustle Nation and Audible. I became an Audible affiliate, so you can get a free Audible audiobook. I use Audible for many of my audiobooks, tremendous selection of books readily available. So if you don't want to spend a monthly subscription to Audible, put in your name and email, then you will get a free audiobook, at which point you can listen to that audiobook, keep it forever, and cancel your subscription before 30 days so that you don't get charged for the monthly subscription. This way you get a free book. Go to triplehaudiobook.com. That's HHHaudiobook.com. I'm a little conflicted with accepting that. I mean, living by no 299s, right? Put a red circle around it. You're highly engaged. You're emotionally invested into your businesses, but you're not romantic. I've watched you a little bit. I've seen like you're not romantic about the money, meaning you're ready to move on when it's time so you can get going on the next thing. What belief do you live by that frees you up to go all out, but then also go do the next thing? Because what I'm trying to get at is the conflict of overachieve or go all out, but don't get stuck or romantic about one thing because you're telling yourself it's 300. Do you know what I mean?
Well, but that is all about, I'm glad you asked that as well. That is all about knowing why you're doing it in the first place. I meet so many entrepreneurs that are, working so hard, right? They're doing their 300 every day. But when I try to find out why, I don't get an answer. The answer to your question, the reason I was always able to go on to the next is because before I started, I defined the endpoint. Why am I doing this particular thing? Why are you launching that business? Why are you working so hard? Why are you running your company? What were you trying to do? And because I always define what the end game, what the end zone looks like, when I get there, I say, okay, I did what I wanted to do on this one, time for the next. So I've not had a problem selling a company because some people feel like I tell them, why don't you sell that business or stop doing it even if it's not working? And, they feel like they have some obligation when they start a company to ride it as long as they possibly can and milk every dollar out of it. And I was like, says who, right? What was your goal when you started it? When you achieve that goal, it's time to move on. If your goal was, I'm making this up, I have $400,000 in debt and I just want to get to even, then if you launch a company and someone offers you $400,000 for the company, and you have a chance to get to even, don't talk yourself into, but if I keep pushing, I can get 700 for the company. And if I do it for 3 more years, I could sell it for 5 million. That goes on forever. And meanwhile, your life is passing you by. When you hit the goal you set out to do, stop there. Say, okay, I'll call that one a victory. And then you can go do something else. Take the $400,000, pay off your debt, and start another business. So I was always very clear on the end game. When I launch something, I know what I'm trying to get to. And when I get there, I can say, got what I was going for, and I can go do something else now. Instead of getting stuck in that forever loop that I can keep pushing this one, and I never know when to quit.
Define the end game before you start. If you had to start over at, let's say, 20, 24 years old, Jeff, you came out of, maybe you went to college, maybe you didn't, but you're a very bright, proactive individual. What business and or career path, what workforce would you get involved in today? What should a young professional just getting into the workforce be focusing on?
It's a little bit of a skewed question because I'm a tech guy, right?
Yeah.
So I spent my life in tech, and tech did very well for me. And obviously technology just gets bigger and bigger. So I'm always going to lean toward that, but that's actually not my answer. And the reason that's not my answer is because this old thing that we hear about, which is pursuing your passions and doing something you're passionate about, is not just a motivational poster. It's the truth. When you are doing something, when you're focused on something just to try to get rich or make money or pay the bills, your level of commitment and passion towards that thing is far less than when you're doing something you love doing. That when my friends say, hey, I got to go to work today, I used to say, you got to go to work, but I get to go to work because I love what I do every day. I can't wait to get in. People in America, we say, thank God it's Friday, because people hate their job and they can't wait for the weekend. You know what I used to say instead of thank God it's Friday?
Here we go.
I used to say, can't wait till Monday.
Yep, let's
because
go.
yeah, even though I had a great weekend, I can't wait to get back to what I'm doing. So I really do think it's important to pick something that aligns with what motivates you, what drives you. That, by the way, is why at one point in my life, I took a break from the technology biz and I launched a music company and then a film company, because those are passions of mine. And I think that part of the reason our music company was successful was because I was so excited about it every day. I literally, some mornings, I'd wake up at 3 and I'd think, geez, I'm wide awake at 3 o'clock because I can't stop thinking about this. And then I'd say, you know what, I'm probably not going to go back to sleep anyway, so I'm just going to go to work. And I wasn't going to, I was going because, not because I had to, but it's because it was all I could think about and I was so excited about it. And that level of commitment and passion, I think, drove our music company to be successful, that it wouldn't have happened if I was just slugging my way into a job every day. So I really do believe that you should focus on something that lights your fire, that you love doing, and you will do way better at that than if you got an engineering degree just because everyone told you could make good money in engineering.
Powerful. Jeff, just a side note, the headset you're wearing or something, it sounds like it's scraping against a like facial hair or something. There's like a background noise.
No, I see. No, it slipped down. I just moved it back up.
Great. Make sure it's good.
Yeah,
there.
Thank you for telling me that. I didn't see that it had slid down.
Jumping back into the interview, I love that. I think passion is so important as well. I've noticed that in my own life. The thing I want to hopefully have you touch on to clarify, a lot of people, I don't know if you've heard of Mike Rowe and Dirty Jobs.
Oh yeah.
So he talks about don't follow your passion. He talks about, work, and that's great, but I hear what you're saying. Would you go into a little more detail there, just so people who are very romantic about their non-viable business idea that they're passionate about, they don't spend a ton of time spinning their wheels if there's not a market for it?
Well, that has to, when we're talking business, that has to underlie everything. And so I'm glad you brought that out, because I assumed that and I shouldn't have.
Exactly.
That if you don't actually have a value equation, you know what I always tell people? Here's a definition of a value equation. It's simple. Would a lot of people in the world pay you more for the thing you're doing than it costs you to do it? And if the answer is no, congratulations, you have a hobby, okay? You don't have a business. A hobby is something you're passionate about that you spend money on, but you don't make money on. A business is something that, and I want to say this clearly, a business is something that other people with money are so glad that you are doing this thing that they can't wait to take their wallet out and pay you. If that is not a true and present condition of your idea, move on, no matter how passionate you are. So what you're trying to find is the intersection between three things. In fact, we call this finding your golden purpose. Your golden purpose is the intersection of three things.
Okay.
Something that you are passionate about and love doing, but it has to be something you are also good at doing, and it has to be something that the rest of the world can't wait to pay you to do. If those three things intersect, then that's the thing you should do. If not, you should keep looking. Because if you're passionate about it, but you're really bad at it, you're probably not going to do well. If you're really good at something, but you're not passionate about it, you probably still won't do well. And if you're good at something and passionate about it, but no one cares except you, it's still not a business. So that's the golden purpose, is the intersection of what you love doing, what you're good at doing, and what the world will pay you to do. What you love doing, what you're good at doing, and what the world will pay you to do. And so be cognizant, ask yourself those three questions and keep looking. One of the things that helped me succeed was my ability to fail fast. And I didn't realize that till years later. When something didn't meet those three conditions, I was like, man, I love doing that. And I was really excited about it. And I was actually pretty good at it, but no one except me cares. My mom thought it was cool, but the world did not take their wallets out. So I got to go find something else. So when something doesn't meet those criteria, move on, accept it. Okay, I was wrong. Too bad. You have, I used to tell my team, you guys have one day to go home and cry and then shake it off the next day because we're going to try something new on Monday. That's what I would tell them all the time. It's sad. It hurts. We were wrong. This was a thing we were excited about and it didn't work. Go home, be sad for one day and then shake it off and try again. There'll be something else. But I'm glad you asked that question because those three conditions have to all meet or you don't have a good business.
And you assumed that underlying your previous answer to if you had to start over, what business would you go on, because your background. So I just want to make that crystal clear for all the listeners, because a lot of people who are entrepreneurially minded are more, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this actually, Jeff. I'll ask you, do you find that they are much more operator oriented versus creatively oriented? Because many creatives are very romantic. So what would you say to that?
Yeah. So I have been, for the last half a decade, I've made my commitment to giving back, and I've just been traveling around the whole world mentoring entrepreneurs and business owners. So I've seen a lot, and it's pretty even. There are a lot of both, and when they find each other, they do much better than either of them do on their own. Those creative people that are very romantically oriented have a hard time letting go of a business that's not a good business because they're in love with the idea. The flip side is those operator people sometimes will tell me, man, I just feel like I'm slugging away, and they're not really that happy because all they do is work, and because they don't have that romantic or emotional part of it, and that's not a great solution. You have, even by the way, even in the case where some of them are doing well financially, which the romantic, the creative isn't, they're making all this money and they're still unhappy. I literally have billionaire friends who are miserable. It isn't just money that makes you happy by a long shot. So I always like when they find each other. When you have somebody on the team that has that creative drive and someone that has that operational drive, those people form teams and they are way more powerful. It's when it's the 1 + 1 = 5 kind of thing, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. You got to find people that have the pieces you don't and team up and listen to each other.
It goes back to that mutual curiosity and being open to receive that and open to pursue that.
Yeah, and that's why what you and I were talking about earlier, that if you're surrounded by only people like you, you'll miss all these other pieces because everybody will just think like you and agree with you. And that's not the healthiest way to achieve success at all.
Yeah, because if you picture a creative person meeting an operator, operators are like, all right, what's next? Oh, I got a phone call. What's going on? And then the creative's like, well, did you want to have this dark roast coffee? The difference in personality can be drastic, but being open and remaining open to connecting with all different types of people will change your life.
That's absolutely true. And I think that our businesses were successful because of the diverse types of people that we were able to round up and then listen to them. Mm-hmm. I do listen to the artist who is saying things that my engineers want to roll their eyes. And I was saying, guys, he's talking about design, which is going to make our product much better on the market when we're marketing it, which the engineers don't care about. But guess what? It turns out engineers have to care about marketing, and marketing people have to care about engineering, because if we don't do all of those things well, we fail anyway. Everyone on the ship has to row the same direction. But when I got them to start respecting each other and mixing these kinds of people together, that's when we really took off.
And that brings me to the next question, which is, what are your top 3 or what are your major insights that you mentor other entrepreneurs with? Insights into building and retaining an engaged team of high performers and building a thriving company culture.
Yeah, so, at the high level, you already hit on it. The first one is you have to have a culture. And you hired a culture, not to resume. And so helping entrepreneurs and business owners recognize, define, and share their culture is one of the things I spent a lot of time on. The example I give, because it was at my companies, we have 2 people coming in for an interview. They have 6 or 7 interviews lined up for the whole day. But in the first 10 minutes, they go in to get coffee with my team in the morning, and my team's already shaking their head, and they're saying, hey, man, he's just not one of us, right? And then later they haven't even interviewed him yet. And they're saying, Jeff, we don't need to interview this guy. He's just not one of us. And later, a girl came in, and they were like, before they interviewed her, they're like, man, she's totally one of us. We should hire her. I said, you haven't even interviewed her yet. And they're like, she's one of us. So my question to you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, is what does one of us mean for you? How would you recognize somebody that's one of us? The answer to that is because your culture is so well defined and literally written on the walls that people in your company recognize whether someone matches your culture or not. And cultural fit is way more important than resume fit. So, for example, one of our cultural things that I have written on the walls is humanity first. I want you to make the human decision before you make the profit decision. And my people can tell if somebody is that way. If somebody's going to do the right thing, by human standards and not necessarily by profit standards, and that winds up paying for us long term. It might be refunding a customer money, even though the customer was wrong and we were right, but the customer is very upset. And my person says, look, this money's a big deal to this lady. Even though we don't owe her any money, I've made a decision. She's a single mom. I've been talking to her on the phone. I'm just going to give her the money back. Right? That's a humanity first decision that hurts my profits, but represents my values. And guess what happens, by the way? That woman then tweets to everybody on the planet how amazing our company was and how they cared about her as a single mother. And suddenly I get all kinds of new business that cost me nothing. So my values are written on the wall, and my people can tell you right away if somebody fits our culture. So that's one of the big ones. Is that you've got to define your culture, and you've got to share it, and you've got to live it, and you've got to hire to it.
Not to the resume, to the culture.
To the culture.
Yeah, when you said that about writing it on the walls, I mean, what you just said reflects a lot of experienced leadership and experienced in business and in life, because you wouldn't gain those insights without experience typically. So I'm glad that you had such a clear answer to that.
Many years later.
Yeah. And so that's why I love interviewing with people like yourself, because I get to learn at a younger age. So from a 27-year-old going on 28-year-old millennial, business-minded, entrepreneurial young man, I completely agree with that. I recently interviewed at a tech company, actually, which I'm really thrilled about. This is so interesting. When you said that about writing on the wall, I literally, when I was walking through there for an interview, they had their mission statement up on the wall. It felt like I was walking through the walls of at least the personal development segment of my brain. It felt like I was inside my own head. And so that's
awesome.
Yeah, that cultural fit. And like the CEOs know this. So I guarantee you they know that. And it's perpetuated throughout the culture of the company. And it was a fantastic fit. So I'm like, it's so true. It is so true.
It really is. And again, I learned that looking backwards, having the luxury now of looking back to see the things we did that worked. Why did those things work? And so now what I'm trying to do is share those, because it took me a lot of years to get that learning.
One of the things you share in one of the talks you've given, Jeff, is you are friendly with everyone within a company, within a building. You mentioned you had a top sales performer and you were walking with this individual, and you walked past another individual who was the maintenance man or janitor of the building. And I want to ask you, how has recognizing equal value in every person aided you in your actual business?
Well, the answer to that, I'm going to use the word brand. right? Your brand is the emotional response people have when they think about you. What sort of visceral or emotional reaction? And there's a lot of companies that we can think of that really have a brand in that way. When Nike's was always the just do it thing, right? So you thought of people running and exercising and moving, and you thought of exactly what they wanted you to think of when the brand resonated. And what I learned, again, looking back, is that behavior became our brand. Later, I had customers say that we have observed the way you treat people, and we love doing business with you. We found other vendors who might have had a better price or the exact or a same service, similar products, but the differentiator was we like the way you guys treat people. We respect you, and we want to do business with you. So the way you behave winds up becoming your brand because it's the observations people make. And by the way, it has to be sincere. One day you're going to like this. I get this. I'm giving this talk. And I'm talking about caring about your employees, right? As the same way you care about customers, taking an interest in who they are as people in their lives and what you can do for them. And this CEO afterwards pulls me over. He goes, Jeff, he said, help me. I said, what can I help you with? He said, how do I get my employees to think that I care about them? Huh. And I said, okay, this might sound a little crazy, but how about actually caring about them? And he said, no, seriously. And I said, okay, you're talking to the wrong guy. I can't help you. He wanted people to think he wanted to say stuff that made it appear that he cared about his employees. I was like, wow. So your authenticity, especially with your generation, this, millennial generation, authenticity is hugely valued, right? And so if you sincerely do care about people and give every human being, whether they're the janitor or the CEO, the same level of dignity and respect, and people see that you mean that becomes your brand. Like I said, so I had customers tell me that we observe the way you guys treat everybody respectfully, and we respect that, and you're the kind of company we want to do business with. It does help your business a lot. And more importantly, though, it helps you sleep at night.
Yeah.
When you go home and look in your mirror and you say, I achieved success. What did I have to do or sacrifice or to give up to get to success? And if you can look in the mirror and say nothing that I didn't want to do except hard work, that you did not sacrifice any values or behave in any way you're ashamed of just to achieve success, that's a way sweeter success than people who look in the mirror and they're a little bit ashamed at what they had to do to get where they got.
There's a lot of economically successful people in that second boat. Yes,
without a doubt. I know a lot of people like that. And I observed that. And I made a decision. This is very individual. I made a decision that if I'm going to be poor, but I can sleep at night, I can live with that. Because I didn't want to live with the alternative. I knew too many people that were financially successful and unhappy people. And I said, I can live without the money and the fancy car if that's the case. But here's what happened. It turned out that I wound up far surpassing those people because of my behavior. Later, when our business, or even if it was me personally, was winning awards in industries and being recognized, people were talking about that part of who we are and saying, that's why we love you guys and love doing business with you. And so doing the right thing and treating everybody well actually propelled me way past those people. And I was willing to leave it all on the table if it meant I could sleep at night. And it turns out that commitment wound up getting me both.
So Jeff, let's jump into storytelling. How did you master storytelling? Did it just come from giving a lot of talks?
Actually, it came from the fact that I started to notice. Now, keeping in mind that I'm an engineer, so I'm a logical thinker.
Right, exactly.
Things have to make logical sense for me. When I listening to talks, not giving them, and people would say, you got to do this. And I would sit there and think, can you give me that in an example? Tell me how you actually use that. And instead of telling me the principle, give me an example of what you as a leader did in your life or your business to do that thing. And when people would tell me an example, I'd say, okay, now I see what you mean. When they would just tell me to do it, it was harder for me to conceptualize. When they told me a story of how they did the thing they're advising me to do, I could understand it. So I noticed when I started speaking, because I liked receiving information in anecdotal and story form, I started delivering it that way. And I've never had any speaker training. I'm not a professional speaker by trade. Like I said, I'm an engineer by trade. But when I would speak, people would come up and say, "Thank you so much. I finally understood that concept because you explained it to me in a real story."
Yeah.
And so I realized that was what resonated most with people. So I had to make it a point to continue to deliver information in story form. But I'll tell you what, it turns out that storytelling is even bigger than speaking. When I started marketing products and services for your listeners, people remember a story far more than they remember an ad. And I'm going to give you an example like way back from early Priceline days. An ad would say, if you need to buy a hotel room or buy an airline ticket, you could go to Priceline.com. But early on, there was a point where the company had customers tell the story of going to their sister's wedding. And so I wanted to go to my sister's wedding and I couldn't afford to go and I was really upset. And the airline and the hotel travel was too expensive and I was going to miss her wedding. But I found a way to get to the wedding. And at the wedding, it was so much fun. And my sister was so beautiful. And I met cousins I've never met before. And oh, by the way, the reason I was able to finally go to the wedding is because of the low prices available on Priceline.com. But what people remembered was not, if you need to buy something, buy it from us. What they remembered was when it was time to go to their sister's wedding, they remembered these people that had this amazing experience at a wedding and that they can only afford to go to the wedding because they got travel cheap from Priceline. So storytelling is powerful in every aspect of life, but it's powerful in marketing as well.
How do you get better at it?
By rinse and repeat. And then ask and constantly ask people, what did you get out of that story? Right? And if people are giving you an answer that you say, wow, that's not what I meant, then you don't have it right. So I think it's an iterative process that you keep repeating it and people will tell you, but you have to ask them, what did you think I meant by that story? What did you learn from it? And if it's not what you expected, then say, well, why did you think that? And they'll refine it for you. They'll say, because you said this. And I'll say, wow, then I'm not going to use those words again because I thought that was clear and clearly it wasn't. So I refined it just by iteration, but by asking people, what did you hear? And why did you hear it that way? And you keep refining it until the audience all heard what you wanted them to hear. It's just a learning and iterative process.
So let's jump into the Heart Healthy Hustle round. I'm going to ask you a series of rapid fire questions based on the title of the show. The first category is heart. What activity do you use to care for and strengthen your internal character?
Spending time with kids. Tomorrow I'm going into an inner city school. And when I spend time with kids and listen to their hopes and their dreams and their worries, and I don't know, it literally fills my tank and it fills my heart. It gives me hope again. It gives me strength.
That's powerful. Health. How do you maintain your physical health and avoid burnout traveling so much, mentoring people internationally?
So it's really hard, but I made a commitment to my personal fitness. I make time in a hotel. If there's not a place to work out in a hotel, go for a little run, go for a walk, exercise in the hotel room, eat well on the road. You just have to make a commitment and keep it. And right now I feel the best I've felt in a long time because I don't make excuses.
Hustle. What's your main motivation for doing what you do?
It's to wind up with a life with no regrets. I will have mistakes. So that's a different kind of regret. I'll have things that I say, wow, I wish I hadn't done that. But in the end, the life I wanted to live and the things I wanted to do, I want to be able to, at the end, nod and say, time well spent. I did the stuff I set out to do with my life, and I'm not leaving it with a bunch of regrets behind.
The park bench paradigm. So if you were walking in a park, you see your 20-year-old self sitting on a park bench looking out over a lake. You can go up, sit on the bench, speak directly to yourself, using the pronoun you, put your arm around your own shoulder. What would you tell your younger self to do, not to do, and why?
I would tell my younger self, you need to listen to the right people. And the way that I phrase that today is that we get our advice from proximity, not from relevance. Proximity is what everyone around you. So I would tell him, I would say, even though she's your mother and she loves you, she doesn't actually know anything about the internet business. And all these people that are your proximity, your friends, your family, your significant other, they're all telling you what you should and you shouldn't do. So by definition, you listen to them, but they're not relevant to those decisions. I wish I had listened to one entrepreneur earlier on instead of a bunch of corporate people, because I didn't want a corporate life. I wanted an entrepreneurial life, and I was listening to the wrong people. That's the advice I would say. You need to surround yourself or find people that are relevant to your future in addition to just the people that are close to you every day.
Listen to the right people.
Yep.
And stay curious. Jeff Hoffman, thank you so much for coming on to the Heart Healthy Hustle Show. I really value and I appreciate the time we've spent together. I know the audience does as well. Thank you for providing so much authentic insight to me and my audience.
Thank you very much for having me. And you did an excellent job. You hit on the relevant, you dug into the things that really needed to be talked about. So I think you did a great job. I've done these with people that have been doing it for a long time that ask a lot of questions that I feel like, why are we even wasting our time on that? You did an excellent job on staying focused on things that actually matter. And I hope everybody goes out there to live their best heart healthy life.
Jeff, how can we connect with you after the show?
The easiest way, my email is just jeff@jeffhoffman.com. I have a website, jeffhoffman.com, or I do most of my social connecting on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Guys, also pick up Jeff's book, Scale, 7 Proven Principles to Grow Your Business and Get Your Life Back. If you enjoyed this interview, you'll love the book. Congratulations on making it to the end of this episode. What about this episode stood out to you? Next, I need your help sharing this show. I want this podcast to impact and reach 6,000 people per episode by August 31st, 2019. And I want us to reach 15,000 people per month by March 29th, 2020. Have you been enjoying multiple episodes of the Heart Healthy Hustle? I'm thrilled to share with you an exclusive invitation to join our new Facebook community. To get to know other Heart Healthy Hustlers, simply go to thehearthealthyhustle.com/Facebook, where you can expect to see different members of our community being featured weekly in Facebook Live calls. I appreciate all of your love and support, and I will see you in the next episode. As always, be generous on every occasion. There is a story for you, and live wide open.